Everyone, welcome to the Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. And today I am super excited because we are talking about something really, really, really different. And I want to introduce you to my friend, Jess Arce, and she is known as America's dyslexia expert. She's a best-selling author, speaker, and founder, CEO of 3D Learning Experts, an online tutoring company specializing in dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. She's a lifelong advocate for neurodivergent learners, and she has over 12 years of experience working with homeschoolers and students with learning challenges. This is something new for us, Jess. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Welcome. I think we're going to have such a good conversation and give lots and lots of good information. So, welcome to the podcast. And what did I miss that I didn't talk about in your introduction?
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast, Kim. And what's not in my introduction is I myself am dyslexic. So I know what it's like firsthand to struggle as a person who couldn't read until I was 10 years old, and the feelings that I had all around that. I also am a mom of four neurodiverse kids, three of whom have dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. And my husband is also dyslexic. So all of those personal things were left out.
Wow, 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 wow. So you have a lot of people around you, and you said you yourself have dyslexia. So how is that working so how did you get into all of this because of all the family connections and I recall you and I had a conversation about how you had to start learning about what was going on. So is that true? Is that what led you to have your business now?
Absolutely, yeah. So in 2012, we were leaving Texas where my two profoundly and severely dyslexic kids had received services at school. And so my son, who was going into fourth grade at the time, he, his teacher, his dyslexia specialist teacher told me I needed to learn how to teach him the way he'd understand because I was going to start homeschooling my youngest two kids. And so I said, well, if I'm going to homeschool them, I might as well teach them how they, need to learn. And so that was what got me started on this journey. I never planned on it being a business. I just planned on tutoring him. And then my daughter, who had finished the dyslexia program in Texas a few years earlier, still was not the greatest reader and not a very good speller. So I insisted that I start tutoring her as well. And at first she was really reluctant. And then she saw that the program that I was using was so much better than the one that my kids had had in school.
Mhm.
And I was at a homeschool class. You, a lot of times you'll take your kids to classes and have other people teach the class. And so I was talking to a mom while we were waiting for our kids. And I said, well, she told me her daughter was in fifth grade and she couldn't read. And I said, well, it sounds like dyslexia. I said, why don't I just tutor her too? And literally that's how it started. Was I offered to tutor this other mom's daughter, and then she told her friend, and her friend's daughter started tutoring with me, and that was 2012, I think. So
Wow, 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 wow. So it's something that clearly was very needed, and you filled the niche, and like, I have to learn how to do it myself because nobody's doing it in a way that's working for the kids. And then it works for one, it's going to work for a lot of different kids. Could you back us up a little bit and tell us what is dyslexia, what is dysgraphia, and what is dyscalculia?
I would love to, because most people think they know what dyslexia is. And unfortunately, our social media, our movies, they don't really typically give the right information, and so then people don't know. So dyslexia, dys means difficulty or not. So for all three of them, it's, that's the difficulty or not. And then lexia means words. So dyslexia is difficulty with words. That can be difficulty with reading words, difficulty with spelling words, difficulty with communicating words. And my girlfriend, who is mildly dyslexic, was just talking about how she has a difficulty hearing words in songs. And so does my mother, who is dyslexic. So it's all word related. And so people with dyslexia often cannot hear the smallest sounds in the words, which are called phonemes. And so that is where the difficulty stems from, is just from the smallest part of the word. It is not reversing.
That's what I was wondering. I thought that's always what I hear is like it's the what do you see that the letters are reversed, the numbers are reversed. That's what I've seen.
Yes, that's what most Americans think dyslexia is. It is
Wow.
not that. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. It is not words moving on the page. It is not things being unfocused or unclear. It is none of that. So words moving on a page or like there's so many different things that can be related with the words moving, or people see double. All of that is Erlen syndrome. It's also called scotopic syndrome. And if you go to their website, erlen.com, you can do a test to see what color overlay works best for you or your child to help make reading easier and get rid of all that movement. And so different people have different colors that work best for them. The most common is blue. However, one of my kids, it's green. I had a student who it was orange and another student who their best color was pink. And so white background with black text is not good for someone who has Erlen, or scotopic is the other name, scotopic syndrome.
And that's not dyslexia.
That is not dyslexia.
Wow.
However, a lot of people will have both.
Okay.
And that's where the confusion comes in. And both are hereditary.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, and then the reversals are usually one of two or three things. So reversing letters is often the brain has not matured enough to really know which direction a B or a D goes. And I like to, hold on, let me get off of the screen and show you. Okay. You might recognize this little animal.
For those that are on the podcast, we have a video going and a podcast. For those of you that are on the podcast right now, I am looking at a little llama.
Okay.
Yes.
So for the people who are only hearing me, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
You'll just have to follow along to what Kim responds, and I'll say what's happening. So this llama is now looking straight at you, facing right side up, correct?
Yes.
Okay, what is this llama doing now?
The llama's on its side.
Is it still a llama?
Yes.
Of course it's still a llama.
Of course.
Yes. Okay. Now, how about now?
The llama is upside down.
Yes. And is it still a llama?
It is still a llama.
Really? Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay. How about now?
It's facing the other side, and it is still a llama.
Okay. This is the last position I'm going to put the llama in.
The back end of the llama is still the llama.
It's still the llama.
Yes.
So, you know this symbol is always a llama.
Yes.
Well, that's where the confusion comes in, because a number 6, a number 9, a P, a Q, a D, and a B all have a line and a circle.
Oh.
So the brain that's not as mature or developed hasn't realized that the symbol of a line and a circle can have 6 different meanings.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the main reason most people will reverse. And that's why at school, very often, when people are reversing, the school says, oh, give it more time. Let's see if they outgrow it.
Right.
Because as the child's brain matures, they start to understand that this one symbol, a line and a circle, can mean six different things.
Correct.
So that's the main cause. Now, a secondary cause is visual processing disorder.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest son, I tutored him, and his reading became superb, but he still reversed about half the letters and half the numbers in the alphabet at 16 years old.
Okay.
So he went to vision therapy, and within 18 months at vision therapy, he no longer reverses any letters or numbers, and his handwriting got better.
So you're saying you're training the brain to see it the way that it is on the paper.
Yeah, and you're training the brain to understand that it can mean more than one thing.
Ah, wow. Wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow. What is dysgraphia?
So dysgraphia, graph means to write. So remember, dys means not or difficulty. So dysgraphia is difficulty with writing. And there's five different types of dysgraphia. So some people, it's just really poor handwriting. We don't help those people because our tutoring is all online.
Okay.
But nowadays it's not even as important to parents that their kids can write well because they can type.
Type.
Now, schools are not always that accommodating.
Yeah, and you do need to have some writing to kind of make it in the world, to a certain
Less and
degree,
less.
less and less.
Less
Well, I
and
guess you can
less.
go on your, you can text it, you can do, that's interesting. And so the dyscalculia
Well,
is work
so
is,
let me go back to the dysgraphia because
okay,
there's
go ahead.
there's four more types, and I won't go into all of them. But the other type of dysgraphia, which is really important for people to understand, is if they have a child who is can communicate really well, but then you ask them to write a paper and they just shut down. That is a form of dysgraphia, and that's the kind of dysgraphia that we help students. And so, that is something that is not as easy to just fix with technology. Some people can do speak to text or talk to text or whatever it's called. However, a lot of times people get frustrated because it doesn't always get things right,
Yes.
and then they have to remember what they said. So, so those are two of the main types of dysgraphia.
Mm-hmm.
And then dyscalculia, calculia is calculation, so that is math. So that's difficulty with math. And for people who have dyscalculia, math is like a foreign language to them. It's like if I just started speaking German to you, and
Right.
assumably you don't speak German
Right.
or Japanese or Korean or anything, right? It's it just goes over your head. You're not even trying to understand it. And that's what happens with people with dyscalculia. And so the very first student that I helped, she was 18 years old, and her mom hired me to tutor her with reading and spelling. And one day we got done early and the mom was coming to pick her up. And I don't know why, I just started doing some math with her. And I was like, what's 6 plus 4? She had no clue. 18 years old, and she could not add 6 plus 4. And by the time we were done working together, she became a like a cashier at Kmart. So
Gosh.
yeah.
That's incredible. And it makes me think of all the times I was just talking with somebody earlier. I was telling them I was going to interview you today. I was talking about being on the podcast with you, and I was talking about how, as a mental health expert, like, when somebody acts out in school or has problems around any kind of learning, the first thing I think of is, do they have some kind of learning disability, some kind of thing that's making it hard for them to do it? Because helping them on the mental health side, if we don't do the learn, I can't help them with learning disabilities. With dyslexia, I can't even figure any of it out. I can't do that. I can't help you with mental health. And so we have to go at the learning disability, the learning part first.
The root of the problem.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
we're never going to get to the thing if we go down the mental health route. And that's why I find this fascinating and so important for people to know that this is, at least to begin to get what the signs are of it. If somebody's not doing well in school, having some kind of assessment, I would guess, for this would be really important, because it could be the processing of the information in isn't processing the way it does for other people, and they can get assistance. I think so many times, I remember over the years, so many times where kids thought that they were stupid, like literally thought that they were not intelligent, and it was just the way their brain was processing information was where the difficulty was. It wasn't an intelligence level.
That's why I wrote this book. I'm not dumb, I'm dyslexic,
Oh,
because people think that they are dumb. And unfortunately, parents and teachers don't always understand, they don't have the patience,
right,
and they feed into this. Stop being so lazy. Sit
right.
up. You need to be focused. You need to try harder. You need, teachers will tell parents you're not reading enough to your children.
Well, but
None of
also
those
if
are
it's
true.
hereditary, it could be that the parents also have the difficulty and it's unknown, or they feel ashamed of it and the stigma around it. So it just exacerbates the problem.
I had an adult student who was 28 years old, Hispanic young lady. I mean, not young lady, but woman. And she told me that her father, when they would ride in the car with the father, he would say, "What's that sign say? What's that sign say?" And he was acting like he was trying to test his kids' reading, but really he was probably trying to find out what these words said that he could not read, because he didn't want to tell anyone that he could not read.
Right. It's so embarrassing, and there's so much shame around it. And once again, intelligence seems to come to the forefront of, you're not intelligent if you can't do these things. So, so can you help us understand what you've seen, how these learning difficulties, is it okay that I call it a learning difficulty? Like, I'm
I
trying to use
love learning
proper.
difficulty,
Is that
but
good? Okay. I don't want to use, I'm in the process of using proper terminology. So, learning difficulty, like how does it show up in terms of self-esteem, in terms of emotional well-being, and just feeling good about yourself? Like, what do you see as kind of the problem that shows up around these learning difficulties?
that's a great question. No one has ever asked me that. And so self-esteem, number one problem that occurs, and it starts as early as kindergarten. I have seen it in kids as young as 6 years old, because in kindergarten they are already expected to be reading, and they have the line of books that they're supposed to be reading, right, from A to Z. And so if little Johnny is grabbing book level A and most of the class is grabbing books level E, and Johnny can't even read book level A, how is that going to make him feel? A lot of times,
Right.
kids like myself will act up.
Yeah.
I got held back in third grade and I started having behavior problems. And I spent every single day in third grade, the second time around, outside the principal's office. And I became her gopher, because she would just have me go run errands since I got kicked out of class. That was also the same year that I finally got the right kind of tutoring and I learned how to read. But it wasn't because they held me back, because I was never in class. Anyway, going back to behavior, another thing that you commonly see is kids will act like class clowns
Mhm.
because they would rather be seen as the class clown than the class dummy.
Right.
And so let me just make jokes to distract from the fact that I can't read.
I think you just warm my heart. I mean, us having this conversation because this information is so important that if your kid is feeling angry in class or acting out, as we call it, oppositional, the class clown, doing something that makes it hard for them to be present in class, checking out whether there is a learning disability is beneficial because there's literally something they can do about it. And you're not exacerbating the problem. I can think about like kindergarten, if a kid wasn't exposed to books or anything in advance, you just, parents obviously just take them to kinder and get started thinking they're going to learn. Come to find out, the kid actually doesn't know, can't. It's a whole different process to help them, but they're going to act out. I used to work in out of school, out of home placement with kids. I also worked in special ed classes.
Mhm.
And I remember seeing exactly what you're talking about, all the kids doing all the things to not be present at school because there was other things going on. And in my world, in the mental health world, we always interpret it as mental health. And when it comes to school, what I hear you saying is don't do that. Don't do that. Don't always interpret it at mental health. Wonder if it's a learning difficulty.
Yeah, what is causing them to start acting out? Because most kids don't want to get into trouble. They don't want to disappoint their parents.
Mhm.
But a lot of times, and this isn't with the older kids, a lot of times they just give up on themselves and then they quit even trying. And so the parents are like, well, they're not even trying. Why would you keep trying to do something that you're failing at and no one is giving you the right tools? Why would you keep trying to hammer a nail into a board with your finger? If your finger's bleeding, you're gonna stop. And that's exactly what happens with these older kids who are who never got the help, and they're falling farther and farther behind because they didn't have the foundation that they needed to be successful.
Wow. This is so important. And it makes me wonder then, what do you do? Like, what kind of things that are your tools of what just kind of give us an idea about how you help them engage back in that learning process? Because I can only imagine, unless you catch them when they're kindergarten age, which I suspect doesn't always show up on your doorstep. If they're 16, you have 10 plus years of them being in school, feeling really frustrated, having lots of barriers and blocks. What is it you kind of can you give us some ideas about what you do that help engage the kids to get them in the process of being able to learn and to see things and experiencing things differently?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate that almost 100 years ago, a program was created that solves the problem.
Wow.
Yeah. Dr. Samuel Orton partnered with, I'm forgetting her name, Gillingham. I can't remember her first name, but she was a teacher and he was a doctor, and both of them were, into neuroscience. And in 1934, I think it was, they created a program called the Orton Gillingham program. And today, there are a lot of different programs that stem from that program that they created almost 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And so they just need to be taught using those methods. Now, you mentioned kindergarten, and all schools could start using an Orton Gillingham method in kindergarten and first grade and second grade to teach all of their students how to read and spell. And then all of the students would be successful. And it wouldn't feel, they wouldn't be isolated. But that's not, how students are taught. Um, but the Orton Gillingham method is you start with the foundation. So the first thing we teach them is sounds. We want to make sure that they know what sound a short A should make, what sound a C should make, what sound every letter of the alphabet should make. And a lot of times they struggle with that. We also teach them the digraphs early on, like the PH and the SH and the CH. And from there, we start working on small words, 3-letter words, 1 vowel, 2 consonants, 1 on each end, and very basic. Even students who are adults start the same exact way as our students who are young children. They all start the same way. My husband, who I tutored at 44, he had a lot of difficulty with hearing the sounds. And so we spent a great deal of time working on the sounds. Then once we got the sounds
Once
down,
he's an adult, like I think I remember it's like, and so it's as an adult, you're helping retrain, like this works all throughout the ages, right? It's
yes,
like he needed to learn as an adult the proper sounds,
right.
starting with the sounds, and then you move out from there.
Yes. And so my husband is Mexican American, and he would blame his lack of pronouncing the sounds correctly because of that. And okay, that sounds great on the surface. It's a great excuse. You get away with it. But I started thinking, I've met a lot of Mexican Americans who don't struggle with sounds. So why is it that you are struggling with the sounds? And it was because of his dyslexia.
Wow, you just kind of it just opened my mind because I was wondering about that with people that grew up with another language, primary language, and then move into English. Like there's still that need to learn the proper sound in English, and that it's even more complicated if you have a learning difficulty. Like, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, you'll meet people from another country who moved here as adults or, older teenagers, and maybe they don't say the W sound or the,
Yes.
and they'll never get that just because they're, they haven't been trained to use that sound. But it's different when you are born in this country,
Yes.
started school,
Yeah.
with everyone else. I mean, he didn't learn English until he went to kindergarten, but he if he didn't have dyslexia, he would have been able to establish those
He
sounds.
was young enough, or I'm sorry, he came here young enough
He
to
was
get,
born here,
he was born, oh, well, then he knew from that.
but he didn't speak English until he went to elementary school, but
Right. So what do you notice in terms of, so we're talking about the learning difficulty part that we see. And so what we also see, as you said, self-esteem, lower self-esteem, and class clown. And I would also think you probably find anxiety, depression, aggressive behavior, and like it can
uh-huh,
show up in lots of different ways, right? If
absolutely,
you have
right.
that learning difficulty, like how I express my frustration that I can't figure things out could show up in lots of different ways. And what I find is that we then focus on that thing, the way that the angry out, they hit somebody, right? They hit somebody, so that gets focused on, and we then have to track it back.
Hmm.
So are we saying then that, like, so are we saying then that for parents that are having kids that are acting out in school, we should have them checked? Is that kind of what you're saying, or what? Help us understand like how we can start looking for this, or kind of being more mindful about, is it mental health? Is it a learning disability, or is it mental health showing up after the learning disability? Like how do we start pulling this apart?
I mean, okay, let me ask you this. Is mental health ever the cause, or is it always, or is it the effect?
Good question. Good question. Good
So
question.
if mental health issues are not the cause, we we're it's in our best interest to look at what the cause is for any mental health issue, right? Whether they're a child or an adult. But if they're a child, they don't have a job that's going to stress them out other than school.
Mhm.
Um, and if they didn't have any behavior problems until they started struggling in school, that's a very good indicator right there. Now, I had my behavior problems in third grade. Now, my parents did also divorce that year. So that added to my behavior issues. But none of that was addressed.
Yes.
My mother knew I had problems. She had hired me tutors for years. So she knew I had problems in school. When I went for vision tests as a child, I couldn't read what the letters were because I didn't know what the letters were. Now, that could have been a trigger, but it wasn't. Instead, they just put up pictures for me to be identifying pictures at an age when normally people have moved on to the
You
letters.
should know the letters by that age.
Right.
So if we're having problems showing up in school, the even the alphabet, like just not being able to say the alphabet, finding some kind of masking of not really read or pretending to read or being the class clown, we should wonder. We should wonder if there's some kind of learning disability difficulty going on for the child and have them tested.
Well, and they don't even have to get them tested for the most part. Like I I will be providing a link to a free checklist for all three, actually all four of the neurodiversities I talked about, because
Yes.
I also have one for scotopic syndrome. And they can start looking at that checklist. Now, the checklist starts from early childhood up to adulthood. So, of course, dropping out of school is not going to be applicable. But there's ear infections, messy bedroom, a family member who also struggled in school, um, avoids going to school. All of those things are things that occur when they're younger. Now, if they just have an ear infection, that's not applicable.
Right.
But if you see like at least three signs,
Okay.
then maybe you want to get an assessment. Or
Okay.
some states assessments are not provided for free. They're not covered by insurance, California being one of them. California is just now including the phonological component in their uh, academic evaluations for learning disabilities. Now, the Disability Service Act has been around since 1978. I was 7 years old. I am now 53 years old, and they are just now including that in the testing that they provide in school in
Okay.
California.
So we're a little bit behind in California. We need to do some catching up.
But most of the states are very behind. It's not just California. Um,
So do you,
so, but
can I
some
ask,
states, sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
some states will pay for the testing for medical, and California does not. So, and California is very expensive if you want to privately test your child. It's anywhere from $2,500 to $7,500.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my gosh.
if you're going to spend that money, I'd rather someone spend the money on tutoring, which will alleviate the problem, than just get a piece of paper that says your child has dyslexia. And in school, you will not get a piece of paper that says your child has dyslexia. The piece of paper will say your child has an other impairment, or your child has auditory processing delay. They do not identify dyslexia. So, these are some of the problems that exist, which is why I don't really feel it necessary for parents to do an official diagnosis.
Okay. So we're moving into the to wondering about what can parents do, how can they support their kid. The first thing you're talking about is looking for what's going on, and are they struggling in school? Are they not reading or having problems with math calculations? Is there something going on in school? Is the first thing you say they should notice. You said they can then get your checklist, which gives you some things to look at to go, are they in the realm of a learning difficulty or is it not? Because if it's not, we got to go in a different direction.
Right.
So what do they do after they recognize that, uh-oh, there is something going on? What is a parent to do? If it's hard to get things done through the school system, even though, there are laws that do apply, what do you recommend?
So, before I talk about what I recommend, let me
Okay.
talk about the laws,
Okay.
because the laws don't say that they have to give the right instruction. They don't say they have to give the best and highest quality education. They just say they have to give some sort of support. So most of the time, the support is not Orton Gillingham based, although we are starting to see more and more Orton Gillingham instruction introduced in schools. When my kids were kids, Texas and Colorado were the only two states that were providing services in the public school system. Now, the East Coast has a lot of private schools for kids who have dyslexia, um, because the East Coast is much more academically driven as a whole anyway.
Okay.
So, what is a parent to do? A, they can do what I did. They can buy a program and tutor their own child.
Okay.
B, they can contact myself or a tutoring company like mine that specializes in an Orton Gillingham based program for reading and spelling, or a multi-sensory program for math.
Okay.
Um, or C, they can just hope and wait that something changes. And if their child's dyslexia isn't profound or severe, their child will figure out ways to get through life, because
Okay.
that's what people have done for generations. But if they want the best for their child and they want it sooner, and they don't want their child to be frustrated along the way, A or B are the best two options.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of times what we think of is that we go through the school system to have evaluations for IEPs and special ed and all the things. And as any parent that's been involved in that process, that takes a lot of time to get things done. And you're saying like there are some quicker methods to have good results.
Well, I'm also saying that even if you go through the whole IEP process, you probably are not going to get the right results anyway. Because my
Okay.
kids were getting Orton Gillingham instruction and they were pulled out of class during language arts. So this was like the best case scenario. However, they weren't using the best program and they were in a group setting. And when you're in a group setting, you have to wait for every student to be present in order to move on. Because otherwise, if you move on and little Susie is out sick, little Susie's now going to have a gap because
Right.
because the program builds on itself. You need each and every lesson in order to have the solid instruction.
Okay. I think we have some great ideas about what to do. So how can people get a hold of you? How can they start getting, I suspect you have lots of information that you have on a website. Tell us all the things where people can at least start connecting with you to get more information, to be more knowledgeable.
So, I do provide lots of information. I have my book, which is available on audio, digital, and hard copy. And it is written in a larger font to make reading easier for people with dyslexia.
So sweet.
Um, and it gives parents an outline of, how to help their kids, some tips to do, some things to do to help. But honestly, those little things are not enough to really, make the difference. Um, then I have a podcast myself and YouTube channels. So uh, we've got 3 years worth of videos. So probably like 100 to 150 videos are available. Some of the videos are me interviewing people about different neurodiversities, and some of them are just me educating about dyslexia. And I've actually started having one of my tutors do some videos educating people about dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia as well. So that's an option. And then we have every week we have a blog that comes out, and so that's an option as well to learn more. And we have a Facebook group, of course, and and then the best way to connect with me is to schedule a consultation call and see if our program is right for your child. Because within listening to a parent talk for 15 minutes, I can determine if it's dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. I'm also very familiar with lots of other neurodiversities and can kind of send parents in the other direction if our program's not right for them.
That is so, that's a lot of information. So, a book, you have a podcast, YouTube, and blog, Facebook group, consult call. You also had the free checklist. We will link all of those things so anybody listening can go and get access. And I think what I'm hearing a lot from our talk today is get more information. If you think anything is going on, you don't need to struggle. You don't need to struggle. There's ways to get help immediately. And part of that is just getting that information to help you move in the right direction. And
Absolutely.
they can give you a call, Jess, and have a consult. I recall you telling me before that, like, within 15 minutes, like, what's going on. Like, you can, and then how amazing is that? And then people can then figure out which direction they want to go to get this fixed because it's fixable. Am I
Yes.
right? It's like
I mean,
100%.
it's
You got
not
to do the work.
fixable, but we can train the brain to learn what they need to learn. I
Hmm.
mean, there's always going to be a little something probably, like my mom is 87 years old. She was diagnosed with dyslexia as a kid, and she got her master's degree and became a teacher, but she says she still can't alphabetize without going through the entire alphabet.
Yes.
So, I mean, some of those things
Well,
still
but
linger.
then what are your kind of touch points that, like, this isn't my best, I'm not 100%, but I know I can do enough to be successful, to feel successful. I know these are my areas that I struggle in because my brain doesn't process it the way other people does. So I have certain skills that I use to accommodate to that difficulty.
Yeah. But like reading, like my son who started me down this journey, he has been reading on an 11th grade level since he was in 10th grade. Um, and I never read a book cover to cover until COVID. Now, I'm in a book club with you. I read multiple books uh, throughout the year because I have trained my brain to read. And so, I find joy in reading. I don't find joy in reading out loud because that's not something that I practice, right?
Yes.
So I try to avoid reading out loud, but
Right. So there are opportunities to feel successful, to to get the skills you need to get to be successful in the way you want to be successful, whatever that looks like.
Right.
Whatever that looks like. Oh my gosh, this has been eye-opening. And like I've been in the mental health field for lots of years, and you taught me new things today. So I am confident that there are people listening right now that are getting oodles of information that they are going to be able to use to start moving in a different direction. And we just want kids, we want adults to feel good about themselves and to feel successful and to feel like they're contributing in the way that they want to.
And one really important thing I would like to say is parents, don't feel bad if your child has been struggling and you didn't realize it, because you're not a professional and most professionals don't understand it. So, just pick up your bootstraps and dust yourself off and just start from where you are.
Yeah. And the thing is we can't go backwards. We can
Right.
only go forwards, and coulda, woulda, shouldas like don't get us anywhere. It's being in action. And this is what I've got from you today is like we have more information and action steps that we can do to really have a different quality of life for yourself or for kids that you know. I love it. So what I ask at the end of every podcast, Jess, is how do you feed your soul? You work with a lot of people who are struggling. What do you do for yourself to help you feed your soul?
Yoga.
Yoga.
Mhm.
I love that one. That's my one of my favorites too is yoga. I
And a
love it.
bubble bath when I have a bathtub available, but I don't right now where I live.
I love that. Yoga. I'm all in. Love it. Thank you, Jess. Thank you for coming on. Everybody that's listening, we are going to get you all of the freebies, all the things she's talked about, all the links. You will get it. And I think you will get some really great support that you really need. I'm confident you'll get the support that you need as long as you avail yourself of the information. So thank you guys. Thank you for listening to the Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. Just thank you for being our guest. I am sure you have impacted a lot of lives today.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.